Welcome back, everybody. Now, Wake Up, This is Joburg is a collaboration between photographer Mark Lewis and urban planner and writer Tanya Zack. Striking images and beautiful texts follow 10 stories the team discovered in urban Johannesburg, South Africa. And each chapter captures so many overlapping stories that come together around a character, a place or an activity. So this morning we are in conversation about the book with the author Tanya Zack. Very good morning to you, Tanya. Thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Good morning, Simpiwe. Thank you for having me on the show.
And this book, I see it goes into the inner city of Joburg's history and town plan. Do share more on this?
So the story is 10 stories that we came across and collected over a period of 5 years. There are stories that range from stories of buildings, like the building in which the first hat factory was developed in Johannesburg, or the Anstey's building, which is our foremost Art Deco building, but also stories of people who chop cow heads in the inner city, a taxi rank where traders and hawkers turn taxi drivers into customers, stories of waste reclaimers in the inner city, also a story of a man in Turfentine who turns his house into a castle using waste.
Wow.
So
let's get into the chapters and, the by names that you give to each town.
So we have a story called Scop, which is about butchers who chop cow heads in a disused parking garage.
That's Newtown, right?
In the city, in Newtown, absolutely. And where we find is an activity that to some may seem exotic, but it's actually an ordinary activity, a normal activity around, taxi binding points, etc. in Johannesburg. I think that was important around also our title, Wake Up, This is Joburg, is Wake Up, This is the ordinariness of Johannesburg. Inside Out tells the story of the Yeovil market, which is a place where the African diaspora comes from all over Johannesburg to buy foods that may be exotic to us but are very familiar, and where there are tongues and food and oils that are familiar to those who've crossed half a continent to make a livelihood in Johannesburg.
And I see you've also named Hillbrow Good Riddance. My goodness gracious me, how did you come up with such names?
No. Good Riddance. Good Riddance is the name of the chapter that deals with waste reclaimers.
Waste reclaimers, yeah.
Which is Good Riddance sort of intimating waste, but actually is the good story of the waste reclaimers, who are often our only mitigation of climate change in our ordinary households, and people who we're very familiar with in our suburbs. And we trace their stories. There's a couple who do waste reclaiming whose story we traced over 4 years, who are in the story, and who live in Dawnfontein and move. Some waste reclaimers are walking 34 kilometers a day to pull gargantuan loads across the city. Our Hillbrow story is Bedroom, which is
what's that again?
Bedroom.
Okay. As
in room in the bedroom, but it's a one-bedroomed apartment where 34 people were living in what was really an informal shelter. I would not suggest that that's what Hillbrow is like, or all of Hillbrow is at that density. But it was extraordinary to go into a space where people were living at that density, and where there was an enormous amount of support and the difficulty of intimacy and of making do in a space at that density.
So Tanya, what's the level and the nature of research and background that you had to undergo to write this book?
Simpiwe, I'm highly qualified as a town planner, and when I entered into what are the secret shopping centres of Jeppe Street 10 years ago, I found myself ill-equipped to understand what was going on in my own city. And so while I certainly have insight into that and do write policy and strategy for the city, the real research was Mark and I walking the streets of Joburg, speaking to people, trying to understand what was going on. And for that, the camera and the notebook are very important. Of course, Mark leads with the camera, so people know why we're in the space. If I lead with the notebook, I look like I come from the police to shut somebody down. So I don't do that. But it's about listening, and it was about hearing as much and documenting as much of voices as we could in the space, without pretending that we were writing somebody else's story. It was our view of what we were seeing and collecting.
Yeah.
So the Wake Up, This is Joburg is a collection of 10 stories that were collected and written and researched over 5 years.
And as part of your research, have you heard of stories of underground tunnels all over Johannesburg?
Well, I mean, certainly underground tunnels, as in our mine tunnels, where Zamas are at work, and we do have a story. Our last story is called Undercity and is about Zamas working underground and about gold that persists in the city.
And because, and I do understand there's vast gold deposits below Johannesburg.
You know, what is lovely is the very last character who we have in our story says, if only they didn't build so many buildings, there'd be enough gold for all of us.
Right.
In Johannesburg. And, you know, along the gold mine, there's still gold deposits at road surface level and people working informally working those mines. We meet somebody digging for gold under her shack near Vleerhof. There is gold, but there's a greater richness than the gold in the city, this extraordinary, vibrant city where...
Yeah, for sure. The history itself is so rich. Eh?
The history and the contemporary South Africa, the one that we turn away from, that we criminalizing the poor, those that come from other countries to make a livelihood here, to change our city utterly, as they have in what's called Jeppe, in the inner city. Yeah.
And I see Mark Lewis did an incredible job by capturing some of the images that complement each chapter. Do these images tell a certain story? And if so, what story are they telling?
Mark Lewis's photographs are extraordinary. They look like paintings. And there are 250 of them in the book. Each one of them you'd want to hang on your wall. They really are beautiful photographs. Mark and I work extremely closely. And so the photographs are research. They're not illustrative of my writing.
Okay.
But the writing and the text work extremely closely together. We're both in the space. We're both talking to people. We're both interviewing. Often I have no idea what he's seeing, and he doesn't know what I'm seeing. And then we sit together afterwards to understand, you know, what each of us has seen and understood and felt in the space. And so the photographs are like a photographic essay that you could read on their own without the text. And the text is also very illustrative in the writing. It's very descriptive. So you could also read that without looking at the photographs. But then we've, in an original methodology, knitted those together.
Oh, so they are synchronized, so your text and Mark's photos.
They are very synchronized.
Okay.
And we do work very closely together.
Right.
Yeah.
Tanya, lovely chatting to you. Thank you so much for telling the story of a beautiful city, Johannesburg.
The book is on recommended reads at Exclusive Books this month. And thank you so much, Simpiwe.
Great stuff. Thank you so much. Well, we just spoke to the author of Wake Up, This is Joburg, Tanya Zack, which striking images and beautiful text follow stories the team discovered in urban Johannesburg.